underworld. John Paul II neglected to give the shareholders the dignity of a response. Instead, in a gesture of cold indifference to their pleas, the Pope elevated Marcinkus to the position of President of the Pontifical Commission for the State of Vatican City. The position made the guerrilla the governor of Vatican City, in addition to head of the IOR. The promotion was made on September 28, 1981, the third anniversary of the death of John Paul I. Regarding this appalling effrontery, author David Yallop wrote, quote, "Through his Lithuanian origins, his continual espousal in financial terms of Poland's needs, and his close proximity to the Pope because of his role as personal bodyguard and overseer of all security on foreign trips, Marcinkus had discovered the person of Karol Wojtyła, the most powerful protector a Vatican employee could have. Sindona, Calvi, and others like them are, according to the Vatican, wicked men who have deceived naive, trusting priests. Either Marcinkus has misled, lied to, and suppressed the truth from Pope John Paul II since October 1978, or the present Pope also stands indicted." The elevation of Marcinkus was made despite the warnings from Italy's Treasury Minister, the Bank of Italy audit, the worsening financial condition of the shell companies, and the circulation of the P2 list, which showed that the guerrilla remained a Freemason in violation of canon law. Why John Paul would make such a promotion at this stage in his pontificate defies all rules of logic, let alone moral rectitude. One must realize that the Pope, not less than common layman, was aware that Marcinkus was a principal player in the $1 billion counterfeit securities scam, the collapse of Banca Privata, P2 and the strategy of tension, the Aldo Moro affair, and the mysterious death of his predecessor. The real post-mortem miracle of John Paul II remains the continual concealment of his complicity in high crimes from the legion of men and women of good faith who have proclaimed him as saint. In late January 1981, the Italian government, at the urging of the Bank of Italy, established new regulations governing foreign interests held by Italian banks. Tight regulations were now in place for foreign holding companies of financial institutions that were not banks. Such companies would only be allowed if their activities could be scrutinized by the Bank of Italy, and if they operated in countries with a proper system of transparency. No names were mentioned in the new regulations, but the references to Ambrosiano could not be clearer. Within the Vatican, the Pope had responded to his plight with a demand for increased aid to Solidarity. Within P2, Gelli's reply was a request for $80 million from the shell game to purchase more Exocet missiles for the Argentines. Within the U.S. intelligence community, the CIA's answer was a call to Calvi for an increase in cash and munitions to combat the Sandinistas in Nicaragua. The Ambrosiano banker stood on the brink of personal and financial ruin. The game had persisted too long, and the stakes had become too high. The total debt for Ambrosiano hovered at $1.75 billion. It was a debt that no one, including the Vicar of Christ, opted to acknowledge, let alone pay. And thus concludes Chapter 13 of Operation Gladio by Paul L. Williams. We find in there hints of not only Pope John Paul II's clear involvement in profiting in the church, profiting from the heroin trade. We also find that the Archbishop Marcinkus, the guerrilla, he, with the connections going back to Cicero, Illinois, is in charge of the IOR as well as the government of the Vatican. And that's where we'll leave it tonight. Be back to Operation Gladio probably tomorrow night. We'll see how things go as I reorganize my studio around the new situation with a community strike by YouTube on Macduff, Kennedy's man to smash the CIA. So I'll just continue reading here until I'm given back my privilege of live shows. And other than that, I'll be in touch on Twitter. I'll be in touch with you on my Patreon, and I'll put my Patreon up here just to remind you, if you haven't joined my Patreon, you can join it for as little as $1. I appreciate everybody that has joined. I know some people recently have increased their donation from $5 to $10, for instance, in view of the fact that I've lost a good bit of money on the ad revenue, but that's fine. It's all coming out just fine. So I do appreciate it if it's possible for you to join the Patreon. If not, that's fine too. You be the judge of that. Thanks very much. Talk to you soon.